Good morning and welcome to Market Outsiders. It's Wednesday, September 3rd. My name's Naman. I'm joined by my colleague and co-host, Jenny Ray. Good morning, Jenny Ray. How are you?
Good morning, Naman. Hey, it's a beautiful day. September is like second summer in California, so I feel pretty good about my life right now. And we're picking grapes starting on Saturday at the winery, so it's go freaking time. And so harvest is both the hardest and the most wonderful time of year. So yeah, life is good. Life is good in California. How about in Texas?
Love it. I am about to leave Texas. I'm getting on a plane as soon as we stop recording this. And so it's great right now because it's around 8 a.m. in the morning. And so, yeah, this is the time to be outside.
Just about everything good that I know happens right around this time of year. We have, our biggest travel season for the business. Everything that related to back to school is always kind of exciting. Like everybody getting into a new structure. I'm homeschooling my kids this year, so that's a little bit different. But I also hear that you had a special day this week. Is that true?
I did. It was my wedding anniversary yesterday. And so,
Woohoo!
yes, this is a special time of year for many reasons.
I should have caught it. I should have caught it yesterday, but happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, last night was the first robotics club meeting at my house. And so I told my kids, look, if you accomplish 5 cleaning jobs each to get this house ready for this in one day, which is a lot for my 3 little-ish kids, then you'll earn a midweek movie. So we do no screens all week long, and then only on Fridays are they able to use screens. And we have to do it together. So nobody gets like individualized screen time. And that may seem wild to y'all, but we feel pretty happy about it. So anyhow, what it's created is the opportunity for incentives for other times of the week. And so last night we were watching the Beast Games by Mr. One of the later episodes of that. And the longer that they go, the longer the ad time gets. I mean, I think this one had it felt like 12 to 15 minutes of ad time in a 48-minute episode. But one of the ads was super interesting to me. And so I actually went and looked up a little bit more about it. And Naman, I thought it might be fun to bring up today. So just to set the stage, we'll see if our team can actually find a link out to the ad because I think it would be compelling to watch it. But the premise of it is this like designer luxury stuff at a villa somewhere that is now all available on Amazon. So it was for Saks on Amazon. And so my family is watching it thinking like that Louis Vuitton bag or that elegant pair of loafers on a little beautiful clothesline over a villa pool is adorable. But there were, for me, I just wondered, like, wow, is this good for Saks? Yes or no? And is this good for Amazon? Yes or no? And I would just say, a lot of my premise is that from a starting place, when somebody strikes a deal, I usually assume that the answer is yes, right? That like they wouldn't participate in this deal if it wasn't yes or no. But I think it does tell us something about the businesses, and I thought it would be interesting to discuss today. So what's your first reaction? Saks on Amazon. You can now buy the designer stuff on Saks, which was formerly only its own storefront, on a second storefront.
So my first reaction is I had no idea you could actually buy anything from Saks Fifth Avenue on Amazon, because Saks Fifth Avenue doesn't just have its own branded stuff. It sells other luxury brands too, from my understanding, right? So they
I
sell
mean, I
Dolce &
think it's very
Gabbana, they
limited.
sell Louis Vuitton, right?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting conversation because this is like the world's largest e-commerce channel. So like you're going where the buyers are. That sounds good. But also like, is Louis Vuitton really Louis Vuitton if you can get it on Amazon? Right? Like is like the Saks experience really the Saks experience if I can just jump on my app while I'm sitting on my couch and like, I don't know, go ahead and buy something from Dolce & Gabbana. So it's an interesting conversation. I'm excited to dive in. I'm sure you're going to get here, Jenny Ray, but one thing that I just remember from a few months ago is that Amazon took an equity stake in Saks. And so this, I think, is what they
Really?
were. This is what they were envisioning, like down the road when they did that. Was this kind of integration? So, as you're bringing this up, I'm like, oh yeah, like this was news a few months ago, and like when I heard it a few months ago, it's like, oh well, then eventually Saks is coming to Amazon. Like that's the only reason they would do this. Like they're looking to expand the luxury offerings on their platform. They're looking to tap into like what I'll call that top 10% consumer, especially in the US, which drives 50% of US consumer spending. Like when you break out the consumer spending in the US by like decile, like by income decile, you'll see that a vast majority of the spending that's continuing to happen in the economy today is by that top 10% consumer. And hey, guess what? Those are the folks that buy luxury goods like what Saks sells. And so one of the things that I see here is Amazon's kind of leaning into that luxury consumer, that high income consumer, to maybe offset some of the weakness that you're seeing elsewhere in the consumer base.
So, but that all makes sense to me. Here's what I think is the problem. This to me bodes the death of Saks because it does. Because honestly, I feel like this is Amazon's way of basically saying we will now own the customer, and when we own the customer, why do they need Saks anymore? Is actually the real provider
Hmm.
here, the real brand. And so, if I am Dolce or Louis or Christian Louboutin or like any of the designer brands, and I have not been on Amazon on purpose, but now Amazon is able to go to those brands and say, look, like, why would you give some margin away to Saks when you can give less margin away to us and we'll handle all of your fulfillment? We own your customer. Like, to me, this seems like a great way to
Cut out
partner
the middleman.
for 1 to 2 years, but, like, Saks is absolutely
Yeah.
the middleman here, and so
Yeah.
so I'm hard pressed to see what Saks brings to the table in this kind of deal. I think it's very clear what Amazon brings to the table, and so, Saks, if it's simply fulfillment on Amazon, that's one thing, but they're still passing all of their customer
Yeah.
information over.
They are.
And so I don't know if Saks just came to a place where, because I've advised a business that was in a similar place like this, and they wondered about the Amazon play. I don't know if Saks just came to a place where they assumed that, like, every one of their customers is already on Amazon anyhow. The ownership of the Amazon with Amazon is already shared, and therefore this is simply a distribution play. That's what, like, giving them the benefit of the doubt, I would want to believe. I just can't see how this plays out in any way where Saks is a greater business in the next couple of years.
Here's the devil's advocate side of the story. So like what you just said is like, hey, like Amazon already owns their customer. They're not sharing any information that Amazon doesn't already have. Okay, great. Distribution play. Valid, could be true. I think the other side of the story could be Sachs was stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? And so I think a part of the answer could lie in the balance sheet. Like, how much debt does the company have? Like, how many options do they have? How much flexibility does it have? And maybe they just feel like, look, we need cash now. And like, Amazon is a partner. First of all, Amazon took like a stake in Saks. So that just tells you right then and there, they needed a cash infusion. And so, okay, now you, right? Like, you serve the master, right? Like, you serve the one with the money. And so I know that they acquired Neiman Marcus quite some time ago, and like maybe there's debt on the balance sheet from that acquisition, right? I don't know how it worked out. I don't know what the balance sheet looks like, but that's where I would go and look. And okay, like you don't have enough cash flow to fulfill your obligations. This is when you're forced to make some of these decisions that, like you said, might not be in the best long-term health of the company, but like as a management team, like
Right.
I have to think shorter term. I got to survive for today, and I got to make sure that I'm able to re-sign my next contract. And so like I just don't want the brand to die on my watch, right? And that sounds bad, but I think that's how a lot of these management teams think.
It doesn't sound bad. It actually sounds incredibly real. I just think it's important for people to not necessarily just watch an ad on a YouTube special and be like, "Wow, that's cool. I can now get Saks on there." I think it was just so telling. Like you said, I think that you're playing devil's advocate on some of the why I would think that way or what I would do, but the reality is, like, this partnership doesn't demonstrate any strength from Saks. Right? It's, to me, it's like very one-sided, all weakness, and it's weakness signaling, and most people don't recognize that, and that's why you can get away with it for a really long time, right? But if you're actually looking under the hood, I think that's important. So I found an insightful article that we'll link to here in a moment. Is it cool if I share that just to,
Yeah, please.
a little bit? So, what I found when I went and looked at this, which wasn't super surprising to me, is that this was not new news. So this is from May 1st, 2025. So we skipped this on the podcast, probably in lieu of Home Depot Day or something else that was happening around that time. But the kind of like, right, focus is that there is an Amazon luxury stores segment. So this is obviously a growth area or a focus piece for Amazon. And high-end brands like Dolce& and Gabbana and Balmain. Like you mentioned, Amazon did make an investment in Saks. It would be interesting just to go back and see what that was, and also to look at their balance sheet. When we did a debt class at business school, I took a like special debt class. I thought it was really interesting. My dad had worked for a company that 1 year after he retired went completely bankrupt. And I was just like, okay, this is one thing I would really like to understand as I'm developing businesses. Man, this debt class, basically, we did these kind of retail stores. It was like different sectors of retail all the time. And so, right, I think this luxury image concern about the brand is just, I, I think that's always smoke and mirrors. What do you think, right? People always reference, like, we're worried that nobody will go to Saks if you can get it on Amazon now. I don't think that's the issue here at all.
I think there's truth in it. So the in-store experience is going to be different. Like you go to the store not just because you want to buy something, but because you want to feel something and experience something. There's a level of service that you get in the store that you're not going to get on Amazon. I think that's understood. But I do think that there is some brand dilution that takes place if the feeling is, if the sentiment is, hey, like, this is accessible to everyone now. Because like when you look at luxury, brand is the moat. Like, let's be real. Like, is Dolce Gabbana like 50 times like higher quality than something you can get like at Walmart, like, or at Amazon? Like, probably not. You're paying for the name on the purse. You're paying for the name on the shoes. Like, is it higher quality? Sure. Is it that much higher quality commensurate to the amount that you're paying for the item? No. And so, like, what these luxury brands do a great job of is controlling supply and demand. So they just make sure that supply stays lower than demand. And so I do think that in this particular space, like, the concerns of brand dilution are more apt than maybe other industries and other businesses that we talk.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because there is a possibility that the brands themselves want to be buffered from
That's fair.
the Amazon effect that this is talking about.
Hey, we're not on Amazon. Saks is on Amazon.
Correct. And
Yeah.
that there was actually supplier pressure, because you can imagine in a situation where you are managing demand, but you're also concerned about your actual, like, front man going out of business, that maybe they are kind of like, look, we're in for it. Like, let's do this. You have to do this, or we're going to pull. We will no longer sell Dolce to you. We will no longer sell X to you. So, like, actually going down the chain to figure out how much supplier pressure there could have been on this, like, what percentage of Dolce's business runs through Saks, right? It would be interesting to see kind of how much of a risk Saks going out of business would be for these brands. I think one thing that's really interesting, if you kind of read the article, and by the way, you have a couple of free articles on Forbes, so even if you're not a subscriber, you should be able to see it. But this one I think is really interesting. They get free 1-day shipping. So Saks fulfills the orders. These are actually not being stored in an Amazon warehouse. So what that's doing is creating a, like, direct partnership with Saks stores or Saks distribution centers with Amazon's distribution process. I think that's incredibly interesting, because I kind of assumed that it was literally like the Saks brand, which honestly, what is a brand anymore? Sometimes we talk about disruptors on here. We talk about going direct to consumer. These brands are becoming less and less important. If the experience is not in store, what's the point? But Saks is actually not handing over the merchandise to Amazon to put in a warehouse and have a robot pick it. Um, that's interesting.
Wonder two reasons for that, maybe. I think number one is just they want to own as much of the customer experience as they can, and a part of that is fulfillment. Second, I wonder if they're worried about copycats, and I wonder if they're worried about, like, designs being stored in Amazon warehouses, and then, right, that design or that information leaking out. And so that's a big problem in the luxury sector. And so I wonder if, like, there's that kind of reason for them wanting to own fulfillment as well.
Yeah. Naman, if you look back on this, we were talking about bonds earlier. Just one thing I want to kind of go into in the numbers. I think this Forbes article does a good job of highlighting it. And again, right, real luxury is about elevation, not scale. I don't necessarily disagree. But if you have neither, which is possible, it's possibly what Saks is dealing with right now, then that's kind of one of the things that you look at. So, right, $2.7 billion Neiman Marcus acquisition, they sold $2.2 billion in junk-rated bonds. You gotta
Mm.
wonder if that was the right move, right? In an industry where, yeah, it was available, but still not necessarily true, that would have made sense, right? So the bonds have lost about 40% of their value since the high, and a 120 million interest payment comes due in late June. So, I saw this ad yesterday. They've made it through that interest rate payment at that time. I'm curious what kind of, input this came into. So it would be interesting if you wanted to dive into this a little further to look at a recent Saks earnings call or one of their 10Qs or 10Ks. They may have started breaking out this information. So there's probably even some more updated information that is coming out, at least in hints, if it hasn't been fully reported yet. But this is something that I would watch on. Right. And so they said that they had 350 and 400 million in liquidity. But they've got all of these, like I mentioned, right, past due bills from vendors. They're using their supplier cash flow, the float for that to actually fund a lot of these issues. So really interesting kind of finance terms here to learn about how businesses that are distributors like Saks or retailers like Saks would focus on that kind of supplier float in order to fund their business, and also how the acquisition of debt would impact their strategy.
I think this is just a great case study in how like financial discipline and the financial health of your company really does determine the strategy. We talk to a lot of people about business strategy and they just like to come up with ideas and recommendations in a vacuum, right? Like, oh, Saks going to Amazon, it's a good idea, it's a bad idea, here's why, but it's completely divorced from financial reality. And so I think this is the again, just a great case study in how if you're disciplined in managing your finances, managing your cash flow, managing your balance sheet, it opens up more options to you. I think this is just the power. This shows the power of having a good financial strategy and a good CFO to manage all that. Because as you can see, Saks has been backed into a corner, and they may have made like the right strategic moves in the past, but because they haven't been financially disciplined, it doesn't matter as much.
I think that's insightful. And one other thing I would just build on that with is that one of the most common things we hear when discussing customer experience in the hotel space, right? In one of the clients we work with, or when we talk about pharmaceuticals, it's the power of a brand. And I just want to emphasize that I think if people don't understand what a brand does for you, you can imagine that the brand is something that you manage, right? So a brand you manage for one reason and one particular reason only, which is price inflation, right? Your goal is to have somebody be willing to spend more on, in this case, a pair of shoes, a bag, a shirt, a blazer, than they would for that same or similar pair of shoes, bag, blazer, etc. That is more differentiated than the price of the increased cost, right? So you might have the most wonderful craftsmanship, but it still doesn't surpass the ability to price up on that brand. And so, like you mentioned, a lot of people manage concepts like brand image instead of concepts like customer acquisition. And then you get into huge problems because you sit there with this glorious brand that nobody is buying, and you didn't understand the financial fundamentals that go underneath it. So we get really wary when people talk about brand management as a leading strategy as opposed to brand management as a financial strategy. And so if you understand the tie between the two of those, I think it's a huge unlock in terms of managing sectors or lines or areas of businesses.
And if y'all who are listening, you want to learn more about what I'll call brand strategy versus brand management, one of the best thinkers I've heard on that is Scott Galloway. So he's a professor at NYU Stern, teaches an entire MBA level course on brand strategy. So go check him out if this is something you're interested in diving deeper into. Highly recommend at least his like take on brand strategy specifically.
Amazing. Well, Naman, I know you've got to run to the airport. So anything else that you want to share on the SAC strategy? I mean, one thing that you didn't share so far is, have you ever shopped at Saks? And will this make you more likely to buy something via Amazon through Saks with this?
I I have shopped at Saks. I think I can think of one transaction I've made in the past. it was watch for my wife from another brand. But usually when, not that I shop luxury brands often, but if I do, I try to go direct to the brand. Again, for warranty purposes, for like customer experience reasons, I'm like, I'd rather just deal directly with the brand and not go through like a retail storefront if I can. So I'm not really Saks' core consumer.
Yeah. I've as far as I know, I don't have any transaction receipts from a Saks, but I have bought from Neiman Marcus. Neiman Marcus acquired me as a customer with a fashion emergency that I had one time, and Neiman Marcus was literally the closest physical store. And so I walked in, found a pair of pants to replace the ones that were no longer on this earth. And I was able to find a brand that I really loved, get the customer service that was fantastic. And they did a good job of supplying kind of consistent information when that designer was in town. I actually got to meet the designer. I now have the designer's cell phone number. But again, like I have bought through Neiman Marcus, but I've also bought directly from the designer. I bought on Poshmark from that designer. I've requested pieces from the designer. This is not a super high end designer, but I'll look for things on sale from the designer. So I do think that there is a really interesting story to be told, and this just presents the challenges of being in that department store space right now.
Absolutely. Well, if you like what you heard today, please leave us a rating and review. If you've got a take on Saks selling on Amazon, then let us know in the comments. Shoot us an email, podcast@managementconsulted.com. And if there's a business or a piece of business news that you want to hear about next, let us know as well. We read every single comment and every single email that comes in. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you soon on another episode of Market Outsiders.